This is a tutorial on how to make a Snakemake project on GitHub. Snakemake is a way to make your data more reproducible. To begin your Snakemake project, you first have to make a repository by logging on to your GitHub account. In this case, I'm going into GitHub Enterprise and going into the organization for the lab. Once you're in the desired location for your repository, you can click the green button that says New, and then you can name your repository and change any specifications. Once you're done, you can click on the green button at the bottom of the screen that says Create Repository. As you can see, the repository has been made, and now we're going to go to Terminal to start our Snakemake project. Now we're going to clone our repository into our terminal window. To do so, you hit the green code button and copy that URL. Now I'm going to log into HPC using my credentials. Now I'm going to go into the directory where I want to clone my Snakemake project. First, we need to make sure that we have GitHub and make sure that it's up to date. So we do that by writing git --version. If you don't have Git, you will need to download it, and you can find this on the internet. Next, we're going to clone the repository into this directory. To do that, you're going to type git clone and paste the URL that you copied before. To clone, you will need to enter your GitHub username and a password. However, this is not your usual GitHub password, and you will need to create a personal access token. Once you've given your personal access token a name, you will need to click Repo in order for it to work and make sure you have rights to clone the repository. Now that we've generated the token, you can copy that and paste it where it asks for the password. Now when we see what's inside this directory, we can see that our Snakemake test has been added. And if we go inside the repository, all you will see is the README file, which we created when we initially made this repository. Now we will get all the needed files in order for Snakemake to run. For me, my starting input are .bam files, so I'm going to make a directory to put them in. To make sure the input files go to the right directory when I copy them, I'm going to copy the pathway of my BAM directory in this repository. Next, I'm going to go to the location where the .bam files are so I can copy them into the new directory. Once I've reached the location of the .bam files, I'm going to type cp and then the name of the BAM file that I want to copy. I will then do this for the other two BAM files. Another input that I need is the extra files directory, which I will also copy into the new directory that I've made in the repository. To copy a directory, you have to write cp -r. Going back to the repository directory, you will see that copying the extra files and BAM files was successful. To run Snakemake, you will need to make an environment for it. Copy the code and follow the directions on the screen. Then to continue setting up Snakemake, you need to go into the environment you just made by using conda activate. In order to run a Snakefile, you will need to download Snakemake and other packages. Follow the code to download each package, and just note that sometimes it takes a while for them to download. Now we will create two files that are needed for our Snakemake project. Type vi and then a general name for the project. To type anything, click I on your keyboard. This is where we will keep track of anything installed in the Snakemake environment. To save and exit the vi file, click Escape and then Shift ZZ. The next file that we will create will be used in the Snakefile and will be the key of the input files, which are the .bam files. To create the Snakefile, which I will run in Snakemake, I again use vi and paste in my code. As you can see, some of the lines are indented too much or not indented enough, and so I will go through to make sure everything is uniform in order for everything to run smoothly. In order to run a Snakefile, you need to make a job for it, so I will again use vi and copy and paste my job script inside. Then to run the job, I would type b sub, the less than sign, and then the name of the job. To check the status of my job, I can type bjobs and I can see that my job is still pending, but when it starts, it will show run. Our last step is to add the files to the GitHub repository. That way when you go online on GitHub, you can see the files used. To check which files need to be uploaded to the GitHub repository, you can type git status, and there you see I have 3 files that need to be added. Then you type git add and you name each of the files. Then when I type git status, you'll see that the status of the files changed from untracked files to changes to be committed. So to commit the files, I will write git commit -m, and then in quotations I will put a reason why I'm making these changes. Now that everything has been committed, our last step is to git push. This will push all the files that we've committed into the repository. When you git push, you will have to verify with your username and the personal access token that I showed you before. Now when you type git status, you will see that there is nothing to commit. And so if we go to GitHub online and go to our repository, we will see that all the files that we have added are shown.